with our anatomical connections, I like talking about a lot of the cross syndromes, right? Once again, as we've alluded to in previous podcasts here, the classic cross syndromes that people are familiar with, anyone that goes to physical therapy, chiropractic, and probably quite honestly massage therapy school is going to learn about the cross syndromes.
Mm-hmm.
So like we know upper cross, right, where it's like front of the neck weak, the rhomboids weak, and then the crisscross is strength and overactive on the other end. So overactive pecs, overactive back of the neck muscles, and upper traps, and etc. Right. Well, once again, there is kind of a little bit of a predictive cross that does live across like that ankle complex as well too, and it's again maybe not going to be so much a cross. This is going to be kind of the same deal as the knee, where like the overactive, weak are actually going to live on the same side. So if we have imagine our foot and ankle here on the back, you have the calf, the soleus, those tend to be overactive, over demanding, and that's therefore going to lead to the muscles kind of on the bottom of the foot, all those plantar surface type muscles. And in addition, like the plantar fascia with it, those are generally going to be overworked, overtaxed, overactive. And then we've got like a reciprocal weak pattern. So again, the muscles that kind of live on the dorsum of the foot, the top of the foot, are kind of going to be inhibited and shut down more than they need to be. And then the like the tibialis anterior, the extensor hallucis, the extensor digitorum longus muscles, right? For those who really like their anatomy, right? But those are basically the three major muscles that are passing from the anterior compartment. And a future conversation, but when people say they have shin splints, they're typically talking about the front of the shin and that pain being there. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. But those are also going to be weak. So again, we've got like calf, bottom of the foot, overactive, over demanded. Top of the foot, anterior compartment, like your tibialis anterior, inhibited, weak. And that's going to be relevant when we come into assessments and how we treat. But that's kind of what I wanted to go as far as like the anatomical connection. And that therefore ties back into our initial conversation when we were talking about where is the pain, and helps to hopefully illustrate the picture that the pain isn't just going to live isolated at the bottom of the foot. That's why the calf is so predictably going to tie in with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I will just add to that, and I find it so ironic because I think this is the second time that you're going to talk about muscles and I'm going to talk about joints. But anyways,
it's fun that way.
It is fun that way. But yeah, the other thing that I really like to do when I'm assessing this is just look at the whole kinetic chain, right?
Yeah.
And especially, so typically in our joints in our body, as we start, if we start at the great toe and we work our way up, right, we should have similar amounts of joint play. But if one is super stiff, the next one's going to be super loose or hypermobile is what we call that, right? So
yep, that makes sense.
A lot of times what I'm looking at when I have something like a plantar fasciitis or even working up the chain, right? I'm going to look, hey, how is their big toe moving, right? Is it super stiff? If it's super stiff, then that tells me that probably somewhere up the chain, usually the midfoot, is going to be hypermobile. If that's hypermobile, that's already going to put more of a stress A, on that toe off and that push off, but B, on the plantar fascia in general, because it's going to be flattening that arch and collapsing that. And if you're super stiff in both of those areas, then we're probably going to have some hypermobility in the ankle and or up the chain, right? And that can cause a lot of issues as well. So just looking at that whole picture as we move up joint to joint so that we can actually assess, you know, where that motion is kind of lost and where we maybe need to mobilize, as well as work on muscle tightness.